an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Cradle Book 9, Bloodline, Chapters 6, 7, and 8. In these chapters, lots of things happen, but the main one is that Lindon gets reunited with his family. It doesn't go how I hoped. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Andy for commissioning this episode. What's up, Andy? So, you guys, look, I'm just going to talk about the reunification out of the gate because it's just on my mind. And I'll be honest with y'all, I almost made a big mistake and stopped reading after chapter 7 because I was so emotionally drained that I mistakenly thought I was at my stopping point. And I really wasn't. I'm really glad that I double checked today and wound up reading chapter 8 as well. But I probably still would have had enough to talk about for an hour. Lindon's reuniting with his family. You know, Will, you've really got some nerve. You know, you build these characters that I love. You build this magic system that's engrossing. You create a system of leveling up that feels almost video game-esque. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Most people probably would mean that in a bad way, but I don't. And you lure me into forgetting how emotional a lot of the story is. And then you do shit like this, which just feels really out of line. It just does. I don't like it, but I respect it. The thing is that it's the truth. The way that Lindon's reunion with his parents goes, it's really a much more honest depiction. And I assumed, due to the fact that Will White lets his readers have wins. You know what I mean? I've talked about this before, that there are some writers that I feel almost do things for the sake of the masochism of it, or the sadism of it, where it's just they want their reader to be shocked or appalled, and they'll do things that maybe don't even really work within the story simply because they're trying to, especially considering the attention that George R.R. Martin has gotten in recent years. It often felt like people were missing the point of why his characters were killed off and why the story was so brutal. And they would do it as just a sort of shortcut to acting as if they were a serious writer, you know? And I really appreciated that Will White let us have our victories. It's not that they didn't come at a price. It's not that there wasn't a struggle, but we were given moments to just really fist pump and be like, fucking yes. So I assumed he would let us have that with Lindon. And I should have known better, because Lindon is the main character, and the trauma of growing up where he did, with the attitude around him that he did, is certainly still echoing throughout the series. That's the whole revelation to reaching Underlord, is that he still feels worthless and is trying to stop feeling that way about himself. So I should have known. But I let myself get sucked into this 90s teen movie sort of mindset, where the nerd comes to the high school reunion and he's now super rich. He's even gotten a little hot, and just shows up everybody who ever doubted him. And it's just incredibly satisfying in a sort of a cheap way. And I really had that in my head. And instead, Will White is like, no. We're gonna do this the way that it happens, which is people get raised in a dysfunctional environment. They finally break free and leave, do better for themselves, begin to believe that they are better than what they've been told, and then they go back and they expect things to be different, and they're not different because the same people are still there. And that's the thing. This is the thing. And I want everybody to hear this as well as myself, because we all need to hear it. When people make you feel bad about yourself, that is them projecting their shit onto you. So you can go out into the world and improve yourself as much as you want. If they have not looked at themselves and made any changes to their own psyches and egos, no matter what you do, when you come back, it will be the same, because they are still the same person. And that is not to say that always happens. The key is, have they done any growing? Unfortunately, a lot of people manage to go from being a teenager to death without changing almost at all. It's genuinely shocking to me how much folks will stay who they are with no growth of any kind, and they don't seem to see it as a waste. I feel it's entirely missing the point. I am nothing like the person that I was even 5 years ago. Never mind 10 years ago. And yet, we don't have control over other people and whether they decide to grow. So we come back into an environment with people who have stayed stuck in the same mindsets, patterns, values, judgments, and systems. And we are mystified as to why they don't seem to see us differently. It's because it was never about us. Okay? Just, guys, absorb it. It isn't about you. I know it feels like it's about you. It really feels like it. They will tell you it is. Don't fall for it. It's about them. It's their shit. So this reunion with his parents is devastating, because not only have they not really understood anything that Orthos has been trying to tell them, but they fundamentally still believe in the concept of unsouled and the fact that Lindon can't advance. And this is part of the heartbreaking ignorance of Sacred Valley. That it is so much about who you believe is worth something. Because as we have seen, resources and time, and by time I mean like the time from instructors and mentors, those things are granted to people who already seem like they are worth investing in. And so had Lindon stayed here, he'd probably, at this point, maybe have made copper. You know, it's been like several years. Probably would have gotten copper. But I just hate it for him, because these people, in some ways, they don't know better and they can't know better. And yet, Orthos is trying to tell them. They just don't have any frame of reference for understanding. So I have, I just have so much mixed feelings toward their attitude, because to a point, you can't really expect them to get it. But there is so much less happiness at the fact that he is still alive. And clearly, even his parents assume that... All right, I'm going to back up. Kelsa tells him what happened to both of them. Of course, Lindon had no idea about this. I keep forgetting that the Way clan gave them up. So the Way clan is like a mess and have been sort of targeted. But they also, despite being victims, are also the enemy in their way. It's just a bunch of levels of like oppression in Sacred Valley. And Lindon's guilt and feelings of rage, he really wishes that he had destroyed Heaven's Glory School when he got a chance. He's feeling a bit of a way about it. As is Kelsa. She understands why he wouldn't when he joins into the fight later, but she kind of wishes that he did. And there is a big part of me that feels the same way. I can't feel that there is anything good to come out of leaving those people alive. But I respect his stance. I really do. So he's got this sort of like simmering rage about him as she explains what happened and how it all went down. And there's also a real sincere admiration from him at the fact that Kelsa has been such a backbone of the family and has pushed even when it seemed like there was no hope left. And he feels in some ways like she deserves more credit than him. I disagree, because sure, maybe she didn't like have a heavenly messenger come down to tell her that everything, you know, there is a possibility for your advancement or whatever, but she still did have power of her own. She ascended to Iron when she was young enough that it was kind of a big deal, kind of important that his family was able to produce somebody of that level at that young age. So I do feel like him deciding to leave Sacred Valley and get out on his own, and I think that he's given a fairly low percentage of probable success, he isn't giving himself enough credit. But what else is new? Because that's Lindon. So when he goes to see his parents, it didn't even occur to me, you guys, that they are not advanced enough to sense his spirit. So they don't even know when he comes in what his power is like. And if that isn't a fucking metaphor for coming back to a toxic place when you have grown as a person, I don't know what is. The people that you're coming back to have not grown themselves enough to be able to see what progress you've made as a person. I mean, that pretty much says it all. It really does. So, his parents assume that he was lent power by his friends, which I don't know if we have heard about this before. Is this something that is possible? Because his mother says this, like, oh, okay, now it all makes sense. And I'm like, does it? I didn't know that we could do that. Just like lend one another power. Why does she, how would that even work? And Lindon is trying to like explain to them that we are getting the fuck out of here, and the wind has been really taken out of his sails, out of the gate. This whole thing, guys, it's so awful because of the way it goes. His mother asks, so you're gold, and he says something like that, and then realizes that makes it sound like he isn't gold, like he hasn't even reached that. And this is when she says, oh, they lent you their power. Even he must have borrowed someone else's. Then again, they were somewhat right. Yaren had protected him, pushed him, and fought for him when he was too weak to do it for himself. Aethan had given him his iron body, his black flame path, his jade cycling technique, his contract with Orthos, almost everything. And what Aethan hadn't given him, Mercy's clan had. The only one whose power he hadn't borrowed was zeal. All right, Lindon. Before you start spiraling too much into self-pity, How about no? I present to you my argument. Absolutely fucking not. Exhibit 1. Yaren protected him, pushed him, fought for him when he was too weak to do it for himself. Everybody in your clan also got that. Everybody in your clan had somebody protecting them, pushing them, fighting for them. Except you, because you were deemed unworthy of even that. You were basically disposable. So, you were given something that everybody else was given by default, but you didn't have. Athan had given him his iron body. Bitch, no! Okay, Athan knew how to create the iron body. Did Athan tell you to do, 6 vipers in a row in the Transcendent Ruins? No. That's abnormal to the point of basically psychotic. Athan himself was surprised. That's how crazy you were being. That is not Athan's credit. He had the means, but you were the one who underwent the fucking horrible pain and all, like, you did the thing. So, no. His black flame path, alright. But the people in your place would have given you a technique as well. People are given techniques. That's how it works. They're handed down. So that's not even, again, this would be something that would have happened if your people had not treated you like garbage. His jade cycling technique, sure. But the technique is incredibly difficult to the point that most people just give up on it. And not only did you not give up on it, you did it with the fucking parasite ring on, sir. You made it even harder. It's an abnormally hard cycling technique that you voluntarily made more difficult. Because that's who you are. Nobody gave you this shit. You did. Okay, you were given opportunities. You were given the chance. That's not the same thing. Oh, I got so mad. His contract with Orthos. I mean, okay, yeah, he had a dragon. Most people are not going to have that. But again, Athan's working on his own little plan. So, okay, I just don't, oh, he made me so angry. He made me so angry here. He really does not see himself. Oh, I have so many friends like this, and I just want to slap and shake all of them. So then, Kelsa is stepping in for him and telling her parents, she says, stop it. I know you know about the fire in the sky that drove away Heaven's glory. That was Lindon. Duran made an expression of clear doubt. I heard that was Orthos. Were you there? You don't even have eyes that work, sir. So maybe you should listen to the person who was fucking standing there instead of what you heard. Shut up. Oh, I'm so mad at them. I'm so angry. I'm so angry. Okay. So, it was Lindon alone. If I had to bet on a fight between Lindon and the whole Heaven's Glory school, I'd put all my money on Lindon. She glanced at Lindon quickly, and he suspected she wanted him to confirm that she was right. He gave her a tiny nod. Yeah, no contest at all. He could probably go to the Heaven's Glory school and be like, empty, and everybody would vanish, and that would be that. So, this is when Seisha's asking, are you going to fight Heaven's Glory, you and your friends? Orthos has already done more than we could expect, but if you and your friends are really all gold, maybe we should just go now. Maybe we shouldn't fight. And Duran says, I won't leave until we've made Heaven's Glory pay in blood. And Seisha says, and what are you going to do? And I was like, oh, she just really was like, bitch, shut up. You're useless. Get the fuck out of here. And honestly, I can't be that mad at her because she has been imprisoned this whole time. She's clearly got her own trauma that she's working with now. And you can't help when somebody isn't able to save you to feel a bit of a way about it, even if you know it's not their fault. I'm sure that part of her is just a little angry and doesn't want to admit it, that he wasn't able to stop them taking her away, you know? And again, this conversation continues on without them asking Lindon anything. They continue talking with Kelsa as if he isn't there. Lindon fumbled behind him for the door. He was afraid he was going to throw up. This had been a mistake. He should have saved his family without meeting them. What had he expected? His family argued with each other as though he wasn't present. If he opened the door to leave, Kelsa would notice and include him in the conversation, and his parents would half-heartedly loop him in, but they would continue making decisions without him. It was as though he'd never left. Ugh! So out pops Dross. I really, really, really wish we got a Dross POV in these books, because I would love to know what Dross is thinking about this situation, because he can feel Lindon's pain, he sees Lindon's memories, and he does actually stand up for Lindon here in a way that he doesn't usually. He's very keen on making it like Lindon owes everything to him. And I don't think Dross appreciates just how sort of like that chips away at Lindon's confidence a little bit. But I love this. I am Dross, the spirit that lives inside your son's brain. Thank you for protecting my son. Ah, yes, I thought you were making that mistake. It's not easy for me to admit this, but it's actually the other way around. Without him, I'd still be rusting at the bottom of a well. Oh, no. Wait, I'd have been torn apart by collapsing space. That's even worse than I thought. You can stop, Dross, Lindon said quietly. I could show you some of your son's memories, or maybe all of them. No, he doesn't like that idea. So I guess that means he's going to share his thoughts with you the boring way, with his mouth. Now, take it away, Lindon. So, finally, he tells them, I'm not a gold, I'm a lord. Even at that level, I'm very good. One of the best. If you took away my advancement, I'd still be a better fighter than you or anyone you've ever met. Did Orthos tell you why I left? And then tells them about seeing the future and the Dread God attack. I left so I could grow. Lindon turned to his father. You asked me why I didn't come back. Why would I come back? I'm only here now because you're in danger. If I hadn't come back, you all would have died without knowing anything. Stick with me and I'll protect you because I can. While you're with me, you'll never have to worry about anything ever again. But first, I'm taking you away from Sacred Valley whether you like it or not. After that, if you want to crawl back here and die, you can do it on your own. And then he goes and he accidentally pulls on the door instead of pushing, snaps the handle off, and then just blows the whole fucking door off its hinges. And essentially flees the scene. And he goes and meets up with Yaren and breaks down in tears. Which is such relatable shit. Those of you who have been in supportive relationships after a traumatic family reunion or, just an incident, this kind of like being alone with them and breaking down is very, very common. This is something that I have done and seen happen many times. And it's just being around family is really, really tough. And for me, I have it easy in a lot of ways because I don't really have a lot of I don't have siblings, for example. And I feel like the relationship that people have with siblings can be particularly fraught. But I know what I have seen secondhand, and watching it is just awful because people turn back into somebody that they wanted to leave behind and they thought they had. And then they find out that when they're back amongst the triggers again, they revert to behaviors that they truly thought they had just grown out of finally, that they thought they'd overcome. And it's just awful, you know? And this moment here where Dross could show them Lindon's memories, but he chooses not to do that. And I'm very curious what it was. I think Lindon sort of wonders if they would even believe the memories. It could just look like an illusion. They work with the Foxfire here, you know, maybe they wouldn't believe it. I don't know. But my idea of Lindon reuniting with his family pretty much like revolved around him swooping in, backed by this army, like to their front door, and them seeing him fighting, and that being what they like absorbed before they talked to him. That's pretty much how it goes down with Kelsa. So in that regard, it was what I had imagined. I kind of appreciate that Will White managed to give me a little bit of what I wanted, but he didn't let it be that easy overall, you know? So this moment too, that like he goes off and he's with Yaren and sobbing. There was something about that moment for me that was so moving because of the fact that he felt safe enough to break down in front of her. Because there are so many things that I have read or watched where somebody has gone through this sort of awful, upsetting moment, and they don't really feel comfortable enough around their partner to like completely let loose emotionally and show how much it hurt. And I've always sort of felt like if you don't feel comfortable doing that around your partner, then they aren't a real partner. That's what they're for. They are meant to bolster you during moments of incredible stress and sadness. And if you don't feel like you can let yourself be during those moments, they aren't the one, kiddos. That's their whole job, you know? And I just loved so much. There wasn't even a question, you know? It was just they go off until they are alone. And then he just breaks down. And the fact that she is there, there's no moment of embarrassment that's mentioned. You know, it's just, I really appreciated it. But God, this was really devastating. All right, I had to talk about this off the top because I wanted to make sure I left myself enough time. So I'm going to back up now, and I'm going to talk about Chapter 6. Because the last chapter ended with Lindon suggesting the Lesser Treasure Hall, and I was saying how I really don't think it's going to be what he's thinking it's going to be, and indeed it is not. Everything is junk, basically. And I really loved getting distinct descriptions of why things were junk. Let's see. I'm trying to find the spot where Zeal, yeah, this is junk. The flying sword had been made from cheap iron. Its edges were brittle, its scripts clumsily carved. Just by etching the runes more precisely, they could have improved the efficiency by half. And the script was so long and poorly designed that it would interfere with any other scripts added to the weapon. If they had chosen their runes better, they could have added 2, maybe 3 more modifications to the sword. The guardian puppet would shatter like dry twigs in front of the first real attack, and it couldn't function autonomously at all, so what good was it? If you were pouring your Madra into something, you might as well just swing a hammer. Even the Star Lotus bud, toward which Lindon still felt some affection, now struck him as pathetic. Compared to a real spirit fruit, it was like a drop of dew next to a glass of wine. I love this. Honestly, like, it was worth his disappointment to hear the distinctive comparisons and explanations, especially in regard to, like, script writing and the construction of something, because we know that's something Lindon is particularly good at. All the soul-smithing stuff that, like, he thinks about how in one afternoon he could fill the hall with more powerful treasures than everything they had here, using just remnants and scrap. If he got the chance, he still wanted to check out the Elder Treasure Hall, but he was much less eager to do so. He now suspected there was nothing of value in this entire school. That's a mistake, though, in my opinion. I wouldn't be surprised if the Elder Treasure Hall has some stuff in it that, like, maybe it all isn't as valuable as they think to a degree, but there might be some things that are, because he talks here about how they have half silver, which I think Charity mentioned, for some reason, the valley has more of it. It's like particularly rich in half silver. I wonder if that is part of the curse. Like, because is it half silver that's meant to interfere with Madra? Or is that gold steel? I feel like it's half silver, though. But I wonder if that isn't part of the curse, that there's so much like half silver in the environment that it like interferes with Madra overall and does something. But anyway, I just kind of think that he should check it out, because there might be something that's like really useful to someone like him, and just, you know, they don't know how to make use of it. So, I just saw that Andy said hi, Natasha. Hi, Andy. The chat is dead. Normally there's like a lot of chit chat, but there's nobody in there this time. Okay. Noted. So, this is when Amara is like, well, if you're coming to conquer territory, we can negotiate with you. And Ethan is like, no, that's not what this is. And they explain about the Dread God, but they don't really believe it right away. And as Ethan is saying, like, I'm sure you've noticed, there is the tremor in the ground. And this is where Amara says, we needed every jade we could spare to deal with their... Wait, Rom shouted, but he was too late to stop her. Giant turtle, she finished. Then she turned a frown on Rom. Now, why did Rom not want her to finish? Did he know that they were somehow, like, linked? I didn't really understand. I felt like he wanted to keep her from giving that away for some specific reason. And I don't know if it's because he can sense, like, the dragon fire in Lindon, the black fire, and he knows that there's some connection there. But I was sort of weirded out by that. I felt like that signified something that I'm not picking up. So, this is when Yaren grabs the woman and demands to know where, and just tells her to point. And Ethan tries to look, and he can't see them. He can see where they went. He can see sort of the trail they left, but he cannot see them. Just the general direction that they are in. And they book it down there. Guys, this was so exciting. I love it so much. Lindon goes into the cloud of Dream Madra on the staircase that he couldn't even climb last time he was here. He literally had to find a way around it because he couldn't do it. And now it is nothing. Oh, it's so great. I love this so much. It's not even, oh yeah, he defeats them all with no problem. It's not even that. It's so much better than that. It was haunted by remnants and natural spirits, either grown in this unique environment or cultivated by the Heaven's Glory School. As soon as he crossed the barrier, they turned hungry eyes to him. Then they bolted. As Lindon sprinted down the vast staircase, he felt remnants fleeing from him in all directions. The illusions generated by Dream Aura, both naturally and as part of the trial's intentionally designed mechanisms, didn't fool him for an instant. He ran through a paper-thin image of a bloody warrior with axe raised and didn't flinch at the sound of his mother crying for his help. He had dissected his share of dream remnants. They hunted with their spiritual perception as well as some purely mental senses that didn't translate particularly well to living humans. Whether they sensed his thoughts or his spirit or his will, they wanted only to avoid his notice. I love this so much. And then Dross. I've always wondered what it was like to have someone cower before me. I like it. It's a lot more fun than being the one cowering. Dross is getting a little megalomaniacal, and I'm a teeny tiny bit concerned about it. It's starting to really get to the point where I'm like, Dross, buddy, should we talk about this? So, Ethan emerged from the trial an instant behind him, and Lindon slowed to allow him to catch up. And Lindon outpaces Ethan and has to slow down in order to let him catch up again. And Ethan is like, I'm not used to this. And Lindon's like, yeah, I don't like it either. I really want to go, please. Can we just go? And then we go to Weishi Kelsa's POV. Poor Kelsa. It's just so heartbreaking. If Lindon hadn't arrived at this exact moment, they would be so fucked. They would all be dead. They would be dead. Heaven's Glory burned tents and sliced open boxes as they cut their way across what had once been the camp of exiles that had sheltered her. There were hundreds of them, along with at least a dozen Jades, and they cut down stragglers and those too old or sick or injured to run. There was no mercy, only a burning golden advance. Kill them, Lindon, for real. Look, just kill them, man. Look, I get it. I understand not wanting to do that. But they are literally just tearing through innocent people. And they know they're innocent. Like, they know. The Wei clan really didn't have anything to do with anything. The whole thing was fucking fabricated from the start. And they fabricated it purposely because they wanted to target his family because they had lost face. Like, we know. So, overall, I really kind of wish that he had killed them. I get it. I really get it. And I admire and respect it. But I don't think it was the right call. These people have inflicted so much pain and harm and death. I just feel like the world would be better off without them in it. I just do, you know? And they were caught between a tiger and a pack of wolves. The Fallen Leaf School wouldn't protect them, and this mountain was their home. The best they would do would be to hand the exiles back to Heaven's Glory. Her father was with those fleeing up the mountain, but she had stayed back on this hill to watch the attack. Her 3 allies stood with her, and none of them could do a thing. And Orthos, despite being as strong as he is still, he has lost a lot of power being here for as long as he has been. And there's a sense of him realizing that this might be his last stand. Jai Chen and Jai Long are here, and they have sort of teamed up. And I'm just so excited about this because you guys know how much I loved Jai Long. I just found him to be really compelling. And Jai Chen, I was so curious about what could happen with her. Also, the sort of sense that maybe if things had gone a different way, Lindon and Jai Chen would have wound up together. And I am really excited at the prospect that they are going to team up and wind up being friends. I'm extremely curious how this is going to go because, as we know, Jai Long wound up in a position that was weirdly similar in some ways to Lindon, where it was inverted. Lindon was born without power, and so he was shunned. Jai Long was born with power and was propped up because of it, but then when he didn't use it the way they wanted him to, and took on a remnant that was outside the family lineage, they basically abandoned him and treated him like he was completely disposable also. And the different ways that they handled that really speak to the types of people they are. Lindon, despite being completely mistreated, sees this dread god in a vision coming for his family and is like, well, I obviously have to save everyone. And Jai Long is like, oh, I know what I'll do. I'll get this spear that absorbs power and I'll kill my entire family. Very different approaches. But Jai Long, as we find out in his POV later, doesn't like doing that. He did it because that was the path to advancement, but he didn't like it and it bothered him at the time. And it bothers him that it bothers him. As far as he is concerned, in order to advance in the sacred arts, you have to be okay with inflicting harm on people. And, I mean, okay, Jai Long, there's a happy medium between being a complete pacifist and going out and killing innocent people just to further your own advancement. Those are not they are not the only 2 options here. Because Lindon has killed plenty of people, but he didn't do it just because. He did it because he wasn't given a choice. He has spared as many people as he could even when they definitely did not deserve it, like with a Heaven's Glory school. So I'm sort of hoping that Jai Long will find out. I don't know how, because he's been, here paired up with Kelsa for a while. I don't know how much Kelsa has told them about Lindon and his history in the clan. It doesn't feel like he was told very much. And I don't know how much Kelsa would share, because it's sort of odd, Jai Long knew about how advanced Lindon was because he met him outside of this place. But I don't know if Orthos has told Kelsa, oh, by the way, this guy cut your brother's arm off. Like, it might have been sort of kept under wraps. Pun intended with Jai Long. Lol. It might have been kept under wraps what their history was with one another. So I am a little bit curious about that, because I don't know. I feel like if he could sort of move past his rage and see how far Lindon has come while not taking this ruthless attitude that he seems to think is a requirement, I think that would be really good for him. It's no surprise he doesn't think there's an alternative to that attitude, because that's what his whole family has based their entire shit around, And you have to be shown that there is a different option before you consider that option. It's sort of, he's in a weird way sheltered from things like in a way that Lindon was, but Lindon was sheltered from the realities of how much potential was out there for the sacred arts. And Jai Long is sheltered from like the kind of potential that you can realize through kindness and generosity and working together with people and friendship. He sort of began to understand it when the Sand Vipers, right? Sand Vipers? That, I think, began to move him, and we saw how much it meant to him. But then that all fell apart spectacularly. And I really get the sense that that's what Jai Long wants. He wants to feel like he's a part of something and accepted for who he is. And this could just be exactly what he needs if it were to work out the right way. I'm rooting for you, Jai Long. Jai Chen, you're perfect. Jai Long, get a job. No, sorry, that's a Brooklyn Nine-Nine reference. But yeah, I'm very, very excited. Y'all know, I've been waiting for Jai Long. I've been waiting for the Jais to show up. Apparently, there's a whole other thing. Where are the rest of the Jais? Are they all gone? Are these the only two that... Because I know that they were pretty much lost their position due to the, incomplete or unsuccessful attack on the Aurelius clan. But I don't remember what wound up happening to the rest of them, or if we even know that. Anyway, okay, so this is the moment where Kelsa asks them to stay and fight, and she's ashamed to even ask. But the Jai Long is just like, dude, come on. You have to see that this is hopeless. You can come with us. We can get your parents out. But there's no reason to stay here and do this. And Orthos says they have no dragons fighting for them, so I say they're outnumbered. The blood running down his leg turned the dirt to mud. Yikes. That's a lot of blood. So they both leave, and Kelsa is just not even mad at them. She's just like, yeah, they've done more than I could have expected already. And this is when Orthos unveils his spirit, and he feels Lindon. And Lindon had felt Orthos a second before we transferred to Kelsa's POV. It's so great, you guys. It was so sweet, and I loved it so much. He began to laugh. Not the grim chuckle of a moment before, but full-bellied, joyous laughter. He had gone insane. He's here, Orthos said. Who? Hold on for a little longer, girl. This battle is almost won. And she sees all of this light flare and this battle begin. and this dude firing, he throws like a scripted sword at them with the speed of an arrow. And then, this is so, I've just been waiting for this moment for so long. I love, in the midst of this like battle, which is still pretty heated before Lindon gets there, Orthos telling them all to yield. We will accept your surrender. We have reinforcements coming. The elder with the scarred arm gestured, and the flying sword flew back to his hand. It gathered power, then shot toward Orthos with greater power than ever before. Orthos stood his ground, the last of his black flame madra gathering in his jaws. The sword stopped. It took Kelsa a moment to realize that someone was holding it. A stranger had appeared out of nowhere, a blur of motion that Kelsa had barely registered before he arrived, and he held the flying sword by the hilt in the grip of a pale right hand. She didn't recognize the huge man. He glared with eyes like Orthos's, and he was covered by a translucent blaze of black and red. He had run up behind the sword, overtaking it and seizing it in mid-flight. The sword shivered in his grip, trying to escape, but his fingers might as well have been cast from steel. The stranger's red and black eyes stopped on Orthos before passing over her. He wore robes of white, black, and purple. And all of a sudden, she sees the unsouled. And she's like, what? Lindon spun and hurled the sword back at the Heaven's Glory Elder. Flying swords were controlled by scripts. When activated by a specific wielder's madra, their script guided wind aura that allowed the weapon to fly. You could never use a flying sword against its owner. It was keyed to their spirit. Throwing it back at them would only free up their weapon. Unless, it seemed, you threw it with overwhelming strength. The sword blasted straight through the center of the elder, leaving a bloody hole in his middle and a crater in the earth behind him. He collapsed into a heap. Oh, it's everything I wanted. It's everything I wanted. I'm so happy. I'm glad that I talked about his parents first and got that out of the way so that I could purely enjoy this again. And at one point he like picks up a jade and chucks the jade at another jade. Like it's just honestly so embarrassing, truly. So this is when Yaren appears, and I love Yaren. At first she's like kind of in Kelsa's face. Give me your name. You first, Kelsa said. A faint smile pulled up the corner of the new girl's mouth. She let Kelsa go and turned to Orthos. You look about 5 miles past dead. Something stranger has happened to you. Can't argue with that. I love this because Kelsa's like, oh my god, they all know each other. Oh my god, wait, that has to be Yaren. It's like meeting people that you've only like read about or like seen in videos on like TikTok, and you're just like, wait, I love this so much. And this is when Lindon does the the dance, Void Dragon's Dance, right? That's the name of this technique. Black and red aura swirled so intensely hundreds of feet over Lindon's head that they had become visible as a dense spinning cloud of dark fire. I'm pretty sure that's Void Dragon's Dance. And he is about to absolutely fucking destroy these people. And Orthos says, you should stop him. He'll regret this. And I just really wanted them to he probably would regret it. I don't know. Maybe he wouldn't, after he found out what they did to his family. But, yeah. They managed to talk him down. And Lindon says, forgiveness, I lost my focus. And this moment, I love this. He gives his sister a gesture of acknowledgement, but she isn't the one that he embraces first. He embraces Orthos first, which I thought was really significant. Yes, she's his family, but You know, these people are his real family, the ones who have been with him and seen him through all of this stuff. This guy is literally tied into his soul. It makes total sense that he would go and hug Orthos first. And this is when he bows to Kelsa and apologizes. And she doesn't really know what to say for a minute until finally she says, "You took too long." And they hug and she can feel him crying. And it's like, he doesn't even know how bad it is yet. He sees what's going on with the Way clan and the Heaven's Glory School, but like personally, to his family, he doesn't know how bad it is yet. And he's already like this upset, you know? So the beginning of chapter 7, I've talked about most of it because it's to do with his parents and the reunion there already. But I am just going to really quickly talk about the start of it. All 32 Jades of the Fallen Leaf School knelt on the ground in front of Ethan, their foreheads pressed into the dirt. They had seen Lindon face Heaven's Glory, and that had been enough to stop them from pushing the exiles back. It hadn't made them open their doors. That had taken the arrival of the Akura Golds. And they go from, it says, they'd gone from wary to goggle-eyed to tripping all over themselves to agree as more and more golds in black and purple descended from the skies. Lindon was fairly certain they would have promised anything to just get these outsiders to leave. It would only be a matter of minutes before the first members of the school approached them privately, trying to get a hint about how to grow stronger. And this is part of what I think is interesting. I wanted to talk about this before talking about the meeting with Jai Long later on. So this is when he is thinking about both for his own satisfaction and because he was getting weaker, the sooner he punished them, the better. He cycled Black Flame, and it felt fainter than it had in years. He hadn't recovered from his expense yesterday, and it seemed that while he was here, he wouldn't fully regain what he'd lost. The more power he spent, the weaker he would become until he was truly fighting like a Jade. But he had another core. Even his pure Madra was weaker than usual, but his second core gave him an advantage over the others, which hadn't occurred to me. We know that he has so much more Madra than the average fighter because of the technique for cycling, but the advantage of having a second core didn't really occur to me, and that is super helpful. This is one of those things that I know is a device that is necessary for growth in terms of writing, but it's always so hard to read. The thing that you have to do when people begin to get overpowered, when you're telling a long story and your heroes keep moving forward, eventually, you have to take away some of the things that they rely on in order to force them to grow past the sort of complacency that they will inevitably fall into because they are used to having certain tools available to them. So, for example, if we're talking about spoilers for the Dresden Files, Harry Dresden dies and he can't access his magic anymore, and he is a ghost. And he can't talk to anybody, and he can't exert any magic on the world, and he can't do any of the things that he has always used in order to solve problems and interfere with, bad guys. All of those options are taken away, and he has to rely solely on being able to, communicate through other means and get other people to step up. And it's incredibly frustrating for him because he just wants to go in and blast shit, and he can't. Similarly, we have Jaime Lannister in Song of Ice and Fire, and he's this famed swordsman, the kind that is going to go down in history books as being just legendary. And his fucking hand gets cut off, and he can't fucking fight with his left hand. He just can't do it. He tries so hard, but it's not happening. And that's something that is a trope for a reason. It's like even Harry Potter got his wand broken, You always have to do it. And I'm not even convinced that this is even it, because what could count for that, in my opinion, is Dross gets taken away, which I don't even want to think about. But Lindon without Dross, that'd be tough. That'd be real tough. It's not to say that Lindon isn't great on his own, but he does rely on Dross to a degree that is probably a little bit dangerous if there is the possibility that Dross could disappear on him or be taken the way that Northstrider nearly did. And being here and everybody is being laid out by this fucking curse and getting their power drained from them. Seeing people that were used to being so powerful get shrunk to a point. And it's not like they have none. They still have power left. Ethan is able to see a little, but it's just not nearly to the degree that he is used to. Yaren, her physical body is so impacted because of the melding with her spirit. Everybody is just being put in a position where they can't fall back on the shit they're used to as easily as they normally can. I am so uncomfortable, but I'm also very, very much here for it. I really, really, really want to see what happens. Like, there's so much potential here to do interesting things. And Will White always does interesting things. So, at this point, Lindon is thinking about his sister and the fact that she's clearly, like, been starving and everything that's happened to his parents, she tells him about. And this is, I'm going to skip over this because pretty much after this conversation is when Kelsa and him go to see his parents. So we're going to jump to chapter 8. And we hear about the fight between Daruman, the Mad King, and Asriel. So this is really wild. We heard parts of what happened with Daruman. Whether he had been taken over by this being of the fiend, I wasn't certain if that had happened or if there was just sort of a transformation because of the way he was treated. But it seems like he was taken over. And they were right to lock him up, allegedly, from what we see now. Because the whole thing was they locked him up because he locked the fiend inside himself. And they were like, yeah, that's definitely not going to hold. So no offense, but we're putting you in prison because there's only a matter of time. If that is how it went down, I'm a little bit sad that they were right. On the other hand, he broke out. And part of me has to wonder is like, would it have been possible for him to break out if it weren't for the fiend inside him? And did he let the fiend take over after a couple 100 years of imprisonment? Did he just finally break and be like, fine? Because I could see this fiend being like, I can get you out of here. I can get you out of here at any time. You know, if you just let me take the reins. Still in prison. It's been 100 years. Wow, it's been 200 years and we're still here and I could have let you out at any time. Don't you think that it's kind of fucked up that they kept you here? And I mean, I could picture it eventually just being like, you know what? Fine. Get me out. I'm sick of it. You're right. I should have just let you, you know? I don't know. That's sort of my headcanon for it. I don't know if we'll ever find out what exactly went down. Probably we will. But this is when he has like gotten this tool that hides him from the Abaddon. He had raided the personal collection of the third judge of the Abaddon court, Derandiel, the ghost. He had taken from her a band of silver bound with living runes designed to allow even a judge to veil their power. His greatest craftsmen, gathered from dozens of dead worlds, labored for years to break these items down to their conceptual essence and combine them together. After 30 years, they forged his 4 priceless treasures into a device that would hide the very origin of his existence. It resembled a living, shifting thread, made from smoke and shadow, which swirled around him in a twisting cocoon. As they looked upon him, even his closest advisors could not recognize him. He was as a void in reality itself. So he goes to Limit, which we have been to, reminder, with Suriel. That is the place that she went. She felt a beacon drawing her there, and it turned out there had been a message left for Asriel. And the blood that she saw on the wall, she thought this was all staged, perhaps, and that Osriel, like, faked his death. As it turns out, Osriel is hiding, which is, like, the only reason that this dude manages to get away, because the fact that Osriel is hiding means that he can't use his full power. Daruman would have been crushed had Osriel unveiled himself completely, but he doesn't because he is hiding. But the fight was real. The blood was real. All of this genuinely happened. And the thing is that when he comes to Limit, he really thinks, oh, I found the perfect place that I can go. There's like a series of things I won't get into that basically mean there will be no Abaddon here. And yet, as soon as he arrives, he realizes Osriel's there. And he's like, wait, what? He found himself in an underground chamber, standing face to face with Osriel. And Osriel kills his, like, actual mortal form, and he reforms miles overhead in an instant and begun to open a hole into the void. His origin shroud was still intact, as Osriel hadn't unleashed the full force of his scythe. I can let you get away. I can let you run, but I can't let you keep that. The authority of Osriel's scythe focused on Daruman's origin shroud, and there was nothing he could do. The spinning thread of shadows and smoke was torn from him, its pieces drifting back into Limit as he himself fell into the void. So he couldn't even forge it again. And he can't figure out, how did Osriel know I was going to be here? And I think Osriel is sort of connected to the void somehow. And the fact that he looks to be, he's described when he has this thread around him as seeming like a void himself. Maybe Osriel can sense him because of this whole authority thing that we find out about. So yeah, now he has a scythe that we saw him like collect in the last book from the Angler. Is that her name? And he is able to just wreak fucking havoc now because he has something that he doesn't even have to hide himself anymore. This is a weapon of such power that they can come at him if they feel like it and he can kill them, which, don't like that. So then we go to the scene with Jai Long, and he has been, kept from leaving by a bunch of people from the Fallen Leaf School. I love his line when they're just like, you know, telling him that he can't leave. He says, I can leave whether you permit it or not. I am asking you to stand aside out of courtesy and a concern for your well-being. Ugh, big dick energy. Love it. If you can, then do it. And they're all about to die. But then here comes Lindon. And poor Jai Long has no concept of how far Lindon has come. And I mean that in every way. He doesn't know how far Lindon has advanced, but he also doesn't know that Lindon has much bigger fish to fry than fucking Jai Long, and he does not hold a grudge against this dude. I'm sure that he has some feelings about him, but Jai Long really imagines himself as being a bigger, like, force in Lindon's life overall than he actually was because of all the shit Lindon's been through since then. And you just want to be like, Jai Long, sweetie, look, I understand that you want to be cautious, and I respect that, but you're not that important. It's fine. And Lindon tries to tell Jai Long and his sister, like, you don't want to go on foot. It's bad out there. And finally drops the news that it's a dread god. And everybody in the Fallen Leaf School is just like, what's that? They just don't know what that means. So he explains, and Jai Long basically is like, okay, that just means that we do need to leave immediately. Like, that the whole reason I'm here is to get the fuck out, and you have just made it clear I need to get the fuck out, so let me. And finally, one of the Fallen Leaf Jades begins to create this, like, technique behind her. Lindon says, please don't do that. And then Jai Long moves with a striker technique. And Lindon catches the spear, and he's using the blue-eyed core, pure core. And Jai Long has not seen this from Lindon before. Also, again, doesn't know how far he has advanced. So he summons up all of his strength and pulled at the spear. And Lindon doesn't budge at all. And that's when Jai Long scans him and freaks out. And I love this so much. He screams Underlord. And Jai Chen just goes, I know. And it takes a second before it hits him. And he's like, what? And she's like, yeah, I scanned him when he walked up. He's not going to attack us. And Lyndon's like, she's right. I am not. And not only that, but little Blue is like super excited to see Jai Chen and climbs up chattering onto her hand, talking to her. And this is when Jai Long found himself still in a fighting crouch, Madra flowing through him, as Jai Chen chatted merrily to Lindon's Riverseed, and Lindon himself reassured a Jade that he meant no harm. At that moment, he was glad for the strips of cloth covering his face. He didn't want anyone seeing his face turn bright red. It's good for you. It's good for you, Jai Long. It's fine. So this, I am out of time, but suffice to say, the next scene, the gang is all together, and they are figuring out who is going to which sections of the valley to help evacuate people. And Lindon is really shocked that little Blue is going to go off with Orthos. It's the first time that she has volunteered to be away from him, which makes sense at this point that, he has shared his power with her, she with him. She doesn't need to physically be near him for him to be okay anymore. And it makes a lot of sense. It's just also for me a little bit anxiety inducing. And he also, this is when he tries to exert authority. And it goes so. He's able to move a mug, but when he goes to fill it with water, he passes out. Emptying it is super easy. And it turns out that this is because emptying is related to him being connected to the void, which sort of ties in with me assuming that someday Lindon's going to take Osriel's place, or do the same job as Osriel, something like this. But yeah, this whole scene with him attempting a variety of different changes to the cup and seeing what works and doesn't, I actually did find really interesting. I'm sorry that I'm out of time, but I do enjoy that we're getting into a place where the magic is becoming a little less literal and a little bit more conceptual. That means that there's all kinds of new possibility opening up, and Lindon, when he empties the cup, he's like, well, the water just went back into the jug. Why is that easier than moving the mug? Because that's moving the water. And Ethan's like, yeah, but it's emptying it, though. It's just it's not the same thing. I was like, all right, you know what? I'm willing to accept that. And then he tries to empty it, but it turns out Ethan is trying to keep it full. And so this is the first time that he has tried to pit his will against somebody in that specific way. And that will be interesting. So I'm going to wrap up. I'm sorry I am so over time. Nobody else is sorry, I'm sure. Thank you, Andy, for coming and hanging out in the chat. And yeah, I'm just really surprised that nobody has talked at all, because I see that there's 10 people here. But nevertheless, I hope that you all have enjoyed the coverage. And I will be seeing you on Friday with a new episode. I'm so excited. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
was an Unspoiled Network podcast.